So, welcome everyone to the Enlight Life podcast. I am your host, Alexandra Cousens, and I'm here with Amy. I might be butchering your last name, Gernaat.
Gernot, you're so close.
Am I saying that right? Okay, perfect. And, just before we hit record, we thought, am I going to dive in and know to know who is Amy? And I thought, you know what? No, we're going to keep this authentic. And the reason why I invited Amy on the podcast was because even though I don't know much about her background, we've been, typical Facebook friends for probably several years. And I read a post of hers maybe a week or so ago, where she was talking about her own journey of healing and how diverse it was and what all it took. And like I said, I don't know. And so we're going to discover, her own journey. And I thought, let's just really authentically, discover it together. But what hit me about her post was, oh my gosh, here's a woman that speaks my language, that completely seems to understand the multifaceted um, ramifications of what it means oftentimes to really heal. And, just briefly, I'll tell Amy, um, that also for me, like having spent a lifetime really until the age of 40, well, age of 40, I was bedridden, and then really kind of like my real life started when I decided, okay, I need to heal all of me, not just my physical body. Everything needed to be addressed. And it's been a freaking crazy hell of a journey that sometimes, I feel if I tell someone the whole story, I mean, my husband always says, like, you need to write the book because it's just so crazy. I go, can people believe? And so when you wrote your post, I was like, yeah, I think this woman gets it. And there's not a lot of people who do and can, because we all have such diverse journeys. So, Amy, who's Amy?
Well, I love hearing part of your story. And we have been Facebook friends for a few years and I see your stuff and I've so appreciated like that we do have the same language, right? Because there's not a lot of people who really see the body and the path of healing the way that we see it. And so it's so wonderful to connect with someone who gets it where we have that shared language. My journey started back,
Yeah.
I'm 46 now, so started back in 2010. So I would have been what, 30, like in my early 30s then. And prior to that, I really didn't know much about holistic health. It was just you go to the doctor when you're sick and calories in, calories out. That's kind of all I really knew, like the very basic standard, across the board, this is how things go. And I have actually had health issues since I was very little. Starting about 2 years old, I had very severe digestive issues. I had gastroparesis, I had compacted bowels, I had severe mineral and nutrient deficiencies. I was sick all the time. And there was never any answers. It was just like, oh, well, you'll grow out of it. And so I grew out of some of those things, but I grew into other things, right? Like something else just takes the place of it when you're not getting to actually what's going on. There's just the next thing will come up for the body to tell you, hey, there's still these underlying issues. So then I had really severe menstrual issues. Like I would get flu-like symptoms when I would have my period. I had chronic headaches from the age of 15 to 30. I had a headache every single day. It was just like the normal thing to have a headache. I had 4 to 5 sinus infections a year, which meant 4 to 5 rounds of antibiotics per year, and on and on. I know. And no one ever talked to me about why I was sick all the time. No one asked me the questions. There was never a conversation about it. So I just, this is the way it is. Like, this is just life, and you're sick, and you just have to just deal with it. And this is the lot you have, been given. So in my early 30s, I was getting this weird pressure in my chest, and it was scary, and I didn't know what was going on. So I started going to the doctors. They couldn't tell me what was happening. I started with my GP, then they sent me to a cardiologist. They sent me out the door with an article on hysteria. So we know how that one went. Basically, like, this is all in your head and you're just hysterical woman. And I didn't read it till I got in the car and I was furious. I was so angry and just humiliated, and it was an awful, awful experience. So I went to an
Wow.
ENT and they finally diagnosed me with what they called upper esophageal reflux. And what their solution was that I take Nexium. That was a solution. Like, you're going to take a PPI and this is how we're going to deal with that. And at that point, I'm like, I'm in my early 30s. I do not want to go the route of medication for my whole life. I've already had health problems my whole life. Like, there has to be some kind of other answer here. So I Googled natural alternatives to Nexium. There was actually a book called Natural Alternatives to Nexium. It was at Barnes and Noble. I got the book, I started reading it, and one of the things in there talked about taking gluten out of your diet. I didn't know what that was. Like, this is pre anybody talking about gluten-free anything. Like, there's no products, there's nothing like that. So I was like, well, I can try that. It doesn't cost me anything. No one has to help me with it. So I did. And I was really, really sick for 2 weeks, really sick, going through withdrawals, basically. And within 3 months, my health was so radically different. I was like, what just happened? Like, the bloating I had had since I was in my teens was probably 80% improved. My chronic headaches and sinus infections are gone. Like, I haven't had chronic headaches since this happened. My menstrual cycle started to regulate. Just all of these, I lost like 25 pounds, which was not even the purpose of what I was trying to do. And I was just floored and also totally confused. I had no idea that food had that kind of an impact. None. So that
Yeah.
started me down the road of learning about nutrition. I went through with the Weston Price Foundation and learned there, and then holistic nutrition, then functional nutrition, and then nervous system training. And that's when the second ball dropped, right? Like, how you were saying, like, there's so many facets to it. And so I had dialed in one area and I was like, this is it. I have found the answer to all my problems. And it wasn't. And I was very sick with the post that I wrote about chronic vestibular neuritis, which is essentially chronic vertigo. And it's incredibly disabling, incredibly debilitating. Basically, it's not just like when you stand up and everything spins a little bit, like the world wobbles like this. Every movement, the world is doing this. And it's damage to one of the vestibular nerves in the inner ear. And so the brain is in this constant work of trying to process all of this information coming in with different signals coming in through each ear, and they're not reconciling. And so I had very severe fatigue for a couple of years with that as I was going through the healing process. And that is what really led me to the deeper discovery of what is health and what is healing and what are all the facets of it, not just the one source. And of course, I learned that through working with clients too, that just going the nutrition route, just going the protocol route, it just didn't work. It worked for some would have some improvements, some would have little but no improvements, and some would go opposite direction, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
just been this journey of really understand, also completely changing the way I think of symptoms and dis-ease in the body, and that's the healing. It's not a disease. It's not the body, attacking. It's not the body doing any of those things. It is the healing. And that changed everything. Everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like I want to shout hallelujah, and I want to go, because this exact thing that you said, the symptoms is the beginning of the healing. It is like, it makes me want to cry, because really, finally, we as a collective, because of course, there's you, there's me, I'm sure there's other people that are, now we're getting to it. Now we're getting to it.
Yes.
It's the fact that, and funny enough, I had this belief since I was a child. There was something within me that got excited when people got sick. I would get excited because I would go, oh my gosh, now the magic is happening. It was the weirdest thing. And I would even feel guilty for it, right? Because, like, who gets happy when someone gets sick? But there was a knowing. that, oh my gosh, now they get sick, now they have a chance at real life,
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the reality, right? And you know exactly what I mean. Because the life that I was living before I got really sick, sick enough to needing to take notice, to the point where my body was like, you know what? We ain't working anymore. We ain't functioning for you anymore. We've had it. You are either going to get the freaking message or you're going to leave the planet because we actually do
Yeah.
not care. That was the message. And my life, just as your life, and I can see it and feel it, like everything changed from there. There's a life before getting that message and there's a life after.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
nothing can ever change, like I always say, I'm not immune to disease, right? Just because I live the life that I live, I'm not immune. Anything can always happen. But what I am immune is to believing that any kind of disease or symptom is something coming from the outside attacking me. And
Yes.
there's a much bigger picture, and that disease ultimately, I see it as it's God tugging at my ear and going, woohoo, there is something that you need to learn, to listen to expand into, and that's all.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. and
Yes.
and
I
I
love
would
it.
say, if there is one message that I would love for people to get, for like everyone to get, it's exactly this. It's, please, can we change our view on disease? Because disease is just an accumulation of symptoms, and it's just a sign that the body is wanting to begin the healing journey. And it's not just the physical body, but it's your whole being.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think that's one of the most important, well, it's the most important to me, shifts in the belief and how we approach the body. Because when you approach the body and working with the body from the idea that there's not something that's disastrously broken with your body, they are all messages. It's saying, wake up over here and wake up over here and wake up over here. And it's just going to keep tapping until it needs to bring the 2x4 in and level you to the point where you don't have any other choice but to pay attention. And when you see the body, when you can see it from the brilliance that the body really is, that brilliance that it's actually healing you, like it's doing everything in its power for you to survive because it loves you that much and wants you to maintain what you're supposed to be here and do on the planet, what you're supposed to add to the world, and it will support you, but you have to partner with it.
Yes. Yes. I always say you have to fully participate. And if you're not a full participant on your healing journey, right? Because most of us,
Yeah.
until we get this, most of us, we delegate the healing to, oh yeah, I'm going to see what my doctor says. I'm going to see what my functional nutritionist says. I'm going to see what the biohacking specialist says. There isn't a full involvement, a full participation.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's still like looking for that magic pill, like this thing's going to fix me, or this thing's going to fix me, or this person has the answer. And we've been so trained, through our lives, through the traditional medical system, that somebody else does have the answer, that you can't know unless you have a medical degree. Like you can't know and trust your own body. You can't know and trust that the experience you're having is a real, true experience, just like the doctor giving me, paperwork on hysteria, telling me that the experience I was having in my body was not a true experience. And that
Yeah.
there is something I can do with my body to change that messaging, to give her what she requires and what she's asking for, whether that's something tangible or intangible. So she no longer has to tell me to get the message.
Absolutely. And this is where, yeah, let's talk about these intangibles, right? Because initially, because had my first bout of big healing through becoming a raw foodist, doing long fasts, really kind of going full in on the radical. So for a while, for the first few years, I believed, okay, everybody needs to be raw. And here I want to say, will everybody benefit to a degree from raw foods because of the high enzymes? Of course. And not everybody, it's not going to be everybody's journey, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is with fasting potentially. I mean, we know fasting is amazing and has so many benefits. Is that going to be the answer for everybody? For no, it's not. And so eventually, first I boxed myself into, okay, I'm going to advocate for raw foods. I'm going to advocate for fasting and detoxing and all the things, which I'm still a partial advocate. But I needed to eventually come out of that box and go, okay, hang on. The picture is way, way, way bigger. And then I had to bring all the pieces together and go, well, like we're saying, the shards of truth and of things that are going to move the needle are so many. Because yes, of course we need to address nutrition and remineralization and neuroendocrine system, like all of that. Yes, yes, yes. And then we get to the, we want to call it the metaphysical aspects, the psycho-spiritual aspects, and yes, the mystical, because I sure had a lot of mystical experiences that, where do I box them in? I can't. And messages that I got, right, that shifted things so radically that I can just go, wow, I just received messages and obeyed to what spirit was telling me. And that's all I know.
Hmm.
And I don't have a scientific explanation. I can only say this is what happened, right?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. There are so many pieces to the puzzle of human. And I was the same way, like everyone needs to be gluten free. It's going to change your life. And again, same thing, like, will most people benefit from not like having a diet completely full of gluten? Yeah, they probably would, but that's also not everyone's journey. And, recognizing first how individual it really is for everybody, and also that there's a different starting point for everybody, right? Like we were kind of talking about beforehand, it's not just
Mm-hmm.
necessarily go fix the microbiome or do the detox or do this particular protocol. It's so different for each person and where their starting point is, and each person really does have their own order for their wellness, their own order that it's going to come in, and all the pieces that are going to come in
Yeah.
from the mental, sometimes I have to start with clients just on how they think about the body and how they're talking to themselves. A person who is just in anger and hatred with their body is going to have a really hard time taking care of themselves to the point that healing is actually going to happen, because the body hears those thoughts, right? It's not like the body doesn't know what's
Absolutely.
going on and you're not speaking it out loud, but the body hears. So every cell in the body is going to hear that and it's going to respond accordingly, not to be a jerk, but it's the body's job to respond to the
Yeah.
environment that she's being given. So that's what's going to happen. And when you start adding all these other pieces in
Mm-hmm.
and you start seeing the real step-by-step process. And another thing I really appreciate about your work is that you talk about the fact that this is going to take time. This might take a couple of years for you to get to the place that you're desiring to go, because all of those facets have their
Yeah.
own pace as well, right? You might be working with the digestive
Yeah.
system and there's a pace to how that system is going to change and transform. Just like there's a pace to that mental system transforming, there's a pace to the metaphysical changes that are going to be anchored in the body. Like the body has to be prepared to even hold the metaphysical changes that you're calling in. So there's an order and there's a pace, and this
Yeah.
takes time, but the payoff is substantial because now you have these tools for life, right? Like no one can take that from you. You know how to ask the questions and how to make those adjustments now.
100%, 100%. And as you're talking, I'm thinking it's funny because I feel, for some people, because some people are not here for deep metaphysical transformation, right? So some
Yeah.
people, wow, and I know some of those people, They go to the functional nutritionist, they fix, one, two, three things, they add one or two biohacks. Woo! I'm a new person. I feel fantastic. I've healed myself. And I've always looked at those and go, wow, that's not how it ever went down for me. For me, it's everything has always been a metaphysical process where sometimes I kind of go, okay, can we just simplify things? And it's like, no, sorry, Alex, we can't, this is not what you came here to do. This is not how you came to be. I go, okay, I mean, by now, at the age of 50, I've made peace with it. I'm like, okay, everything happens for me on a deep metaphysical level, period. Um, but that's why, like, we want to point out, not everybody works like that, and there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Some people, it's just way simpler because that's my explanation is, well, that's just the facet, or the not the facet, sort of the bandwidth of life that they are meant to operate at, right? Some are just really living in the 3D world, and that's that.
Yeah.
And so they only get to do 3D things, and life works for them. And then, like, for us, and that's where I kind of go, I didn't choose this. I would have much preferred many times, right, to have the easy way, the 3D way. I mean, there were times when, after kind of my spiritual awakening, I was like, okay, you know what? I am so sorry that I was ever curious. I, let's just close things down over here because I want to be like those people, you know and I was like, I want to be one of those people that can go into a coffee shop, that can drink their cappuccino, eat their croissant every morning, go to the gym. Like, I don't want to have to think and feel about all these things, and I tried to plead and was like, no, sorry, that's not how it's going to work for you. And so the metaphysical pieces, yeah, so what if you are, if you are one of those people who, you're called through all these bodily lessons to understand basically the deeper depths, I feel, of existence, right? Because that's what it is. We've been
Mhm.
shown the deeper depths and intricacies of existence. And then, therefore, because I would say it's not that for the 3D people, all of this doesn't exist. It still
Right.
exists. But like we said, for some, they're just not meant, or not, maybe also not for now, because I think we all have different timelines when we are called to an evolution, right? And for some, they stay in the 3D and they pass on to the next life from the 3D. And some wake up at maybe 50 or 60, or something like that. What is it, would you say that's how you see it too?
Absolutely. Yes, I definitely see, because I also see the people where they go functional or biohacking and they do the things and everything's good. And then there's us and that whole other range of people where it just doesn't work that way. And it's not that, we may not get some benefit or relief from those things, again, depending on where we're adding them in, but it doesn't scratch the itch, right? Like, it's not that fulfilling full journey of all the things that for us, that would be our full journey. Like, they have their full journey. For us, the full journey, that has to include the
Yeah.
metaphysical side. It has to include that, like, deep connection into the tissues in the body and into the cells in the body, and knowing that the soul us is also connected into all those pieces, and that integration is there. And I was laughing when you were saying, I didn't want to choose this. I'm like, can I have a conversation with my soul self? I'm like, why did we sign up for this journey? But at the same time, it's like at the other end of it, as you start to have these conversations with people, especially the ones that, we could say are coded to come in and work with us and to do this level of work. And that's what they're here to do. The journey with them and seeing
Mhm.
them also gain that same understanding and have that real kind of autonomy and sovereignty in the body. There's just nothing like it, watching a person attain it. It's the coolest thing. It's just the coolest thing, even though it's hard.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I agree with you. I always, I say I love seeing when people go from kind of living as a shell of themselves, where it's a little bit like, woohoo, is anybody there? Because they're just so far gone, and gone from the believing that the disease was there to destroy them, right?
Hmm.
And
Right.
then when they learn that
Yeah.
it was the opposite, and they start to come back to life, and this body that had become a shell, a vacancy, this body gets filled again with their light. It's like, wow, that is really, really cool. And when we then see that these symptoms, this conglomerate of symptoms, really was just arrows being pulled back, right? It's like arrows
Mm.
being pulled
Hmm.
back, and we need to access those places back there so that then this can launch forward with the full life force. I mean, I still, there's still pieces where, especially from the metaphysical, there's still pieces in the metaphysical where I go, how does that even work? I'm thinking like, I don't know if at this stage I could even yet write a book about it, because often I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
I want people to really, and it's like, well, I don't know if I could write a book about it because it's just so ethereal. It's like, I don't know, I can
Yeah.
I can sense it, but I don't know if I can put it into words.
Yes. Yes. I have this conversation with some other wonderful women in my world about not having the language for some of this stuff yet. Like there's not a language, and when you try to put words to it, they don't connect. So it's like, how do I describe the
Yeah.
feeling of what I sense and what I just, like know, but I have no language for it. Like there's no way to actually humanly describe it at this point, right? It's like it's not available yet. And almost like to some degree, does it at this point in the in stage in the game with collectively, does it take the magic out to put a human word to it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like it's not
Yeah,
quite
or
ready
that
to
simply
land
word.
fully yet.
Yes. Yes, I feel that ultimately, we're probably still refining it, and maybe at
Hmm.
some point we can put it into words or not. Sometimes I also think maybe it's not meant to,
Yeah.
maybe it's just it's part of the magic. Um, so what would you say? Because yeah, I often think, how do people? I mean, I do think I have an answer, but how do people know when they're called to, when they go, okay, I really need to do the deeper work versus, oh, I just get to, do the 3D work.
Hmm. Hmm. I think it that's probably another one of those. It's so unique for each person how it pings for them. Um, I think part of it I know is when they start the 3D work and they just keep hitting walls, right? They're doing all the right things, all the things that really should be working, and they just keep hitting the wall. And again, they may have some improvement, they may not have any improvement, they may go backwards, and they have to just kind of take a step back at that point and say, okay, I've done all the things. What am I missing? I had a client who came to work with me last year. She's been working with me for just about a year. She shared her story publicly, so I'm okay with talking a little bit about what we did. But she came to me and she told me when she we had met previously a few months before I was speaking at an event, and she came to me and she said, "I'm not sure I believe all of this woo-woo stuff, but I don't know what else to do." She had had a heart surgery, something that her mom and her sister both had, where there was like a detachment. I can't remember exactly the explanation of it. And so she had to have heart surgery. So she's my age and she's had two heart surgeries at this point. And so she came to see me after her second surgery about a little over a year ago. And that was her thing. Like, I don't know what this woo woo stuff is, but it's something about what I was saying made her like take notice, right? And I don't remember what I talked
Mhm.
about at that thing, but something about the words that I was saying just said something to her, and she had no idea what she was getting into. And, and of course, we're
Yeah.
starting with the very basics. Like, she had very low energy capacity. She was not cleared to even exercise or even go on walks or anything like that when she came in. So we're starting in very simple things, like with working with her, how she goes to bed at night and how she gets up in the morning and what her schedule looks like. We're starting with the basic practical things. And along the way, as those things started to move, all of these emotions and these different things started just coming to the surface. Like, we didn't have to go in and pull anything out. They just started coming. And it's because something happened for her that she knew that this was the next step, and that doing the diet and the exercise was not going to cut it this time. It wasn't going to work. But there's not one single thing that
Mhm.
she could say, this is it. This is what told me it was supposed to go. It was just something in the
Yeah.
energy field that she connected to.
Yeah, and I do think oftentimes, because on my journey of, sort of spiritual development, and for several years, like being really into it and going, okay, like this is the route, and eventually actually becoming disillusioned with most of the so-called spiritual development that's out there. Um, Confetti, okay, I'll take them. Um, yeah, interesting, like spirit approved. Um,
Node approved.
yeah, and I mean, we live in Bali. We live in Bali for 4 years now, where, really, if you will, it's the hub for all of that. And funny enough, I always say coming to live in Bali has cured me, completely cured me, healed me of all spiritual woo-woo BS. And I came, we were living in South Africa before, and I was like, okay, I've healed my body. Now I'm ready to live the higher spiritual life, and, to live in a fasted state. Like, I had all these ideas, right? And I came to Bali, and it was like, "Whoosh, you're gonna fall out of illusion with all of that nonsense." And so it was, it was literally like hit by a brick wall, and everything crumbled just as I thought. But like, I have it all. I'm ready to start my new woo, superwoman life. And it's been another incredible, just amazing journey to go, wow, once more, here I had fallen in love with Bali when I was 11 years old. First time that I came to Bali with my dad was like just a trip, my dad and I, around the world. And Bali was like, oh my gosh, why don't we live in Bali? So from the age of 11 until then 47, where I was like, I'm going to move to Bali, like my dream destination, my dream life. And so this draw, right? That what it took me all these years to then finally face the truth about spirituality and to completely land in my body. How amazing. Ooh.
Oh, the journey as we go on to learn these lessons is so fascinating to me. It really is just so
Yeah, you
fascinating. Yeah, I was also deep into the spiritual world in many other ways after, the same type of thing, like my body's better. Okay, I'm going this route. And then, about 4 years ago, when I started to understand like that what we're talking about, the way that disease actually works and the way the body actually works, it was just a complete upside down turnaround, because I had really just so prized that spiritual, ethereal world, and thought the body was just really secondary. The body was not high technology, all of that kind of stuff. And once I understood that and understood the technology that the body really is, it was like same thing, like everything had to just get stripped away, and it was like starting from scratch.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, and that's where I always go, I didn't want any of this. So it's not my doing. All I did,
Yeah.
all I did, all I can take credit for is to continuously having said, okay, bring it, and to allow the expansion to happen, allow the crumbling and the taking away of identity, right? Like, I mean, by
Yeah.
now I don't have any more identity, and I'm fine with that. But for so many years it was like, okay, I'm this, and then okay, no, I'm this, and eventually it was
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I am, I am,
Yeah.
and here I am in this moment with all the lessons and learning, but I have no idea, where it's gonna go, other than it only just gets better. Like that I do know. It just keeps getting better, and we go deeper and deeper and higher and higher. And of course, when we're deep in the mud, we don't always like it, right? Because that's the truth. It's like whenever I've gone deep into the mud, it's not like I go, yay, another mud sling, shot at me. No, I still
Mm-hmm.
get pissed off, but I go, okay, I know what this is about. So yeah, let's, take this one as well until we can transmute it into something, into the goal that it's meant to be.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah. So where do we go from here? I mean, I kind of feel like, I mean, this is it, right? Like anyone listening to this goes, okay, or should go, okay, this is it. And yes, for those of you, that listen to this and go, okay, this is calling me. Yes, I would say the biggest thing to remember is really that there is no timeline. Like when people, how long is
Yeah.
it going to take? I don't know. How long is a piece of string? And that we just have
Mm-hmm.
to give ourselves to the process. We just have to give ourselves, and it and I think that's the thing. We either fully give ourselves to the process. And I do remember, I mean, yes, my husband's an astrologer, so and he does a kind of astrology called horary astrology, where you get to ask questions, a little bit like card readings. So I have
Mm-hmm.
asked him a gazillion questions in our time together, around, like, when is this going to end? When will I get better? And he's always like, Alex, like, those are questions like, I just don't know. You're on your journey. And eventually I just dropped the question. I was like, well, I'm just here ever evolving. And I know that every single mud slingshot that comes, it's here because it's part of my evolution. So instead of seeing it as, oh, hard done by, it's now, well, this is what I signed up for, to learn things through my physical body. Do you feel that that's true for you? Because I mean, of course, we all have slightly different paths.
Yeah, I absolutely think that is true as well. There's a point where you do have to stop asking, when is something going to end and when is this part going to be over? And you really do have to kind of surrender and give over to the path and to the process and show up every day as you, just like you said, I am. Like I have to show up every day as me because at some point I had to understand that the whole path is the magic, right? It's not just the end result. And in the world of health, we're very big on the end
Yeah.
result, like the big reveal, like the big weight loss reveal, right? Okay, here's your before and after, and here's the big reveal. Yay, this person's all good
Yeah.
and they're cleared and everything's great. And like, well, what happened to that person after the fact? Like, what was their journey moving forward after all of that work? Like, did
Yes.
they stay there? Did they grow? Did they expand? Did they learn new things? Like, that's not just the end point of your life, is having this end result. And, also the focus on a life without symptoms is the most optimal place to be in. And for me, I'm like, no, I don't like to not feel well, but at the same time, I want to know my body's speaking to me. I want to know that there's a message, like that there's sensation and that I'm not numb or I'm not avoiding what's going on in my system. And the only way to really do that is to be present in the moments of life. One of my favorite practitioners, Dr. Cassie Huckabee, if you don't know her, she's brilliant and you would love her. The best place to follow her is on Instagram. And her tagline, if you will, is your life is your medicine. And the way she speaks so poetically and so beautifully about the moments of life, and that, it's not just what's on the table, it's the conversation at the table or the conversation that's not being had at the table. It's not just, getting your
Yeah.
steps in, it's the feeling and the experience of being in the body and feeling the strength happening or the weakness happening, and understanding that the body is always working for you and that the magic truly is in the moments. It's in the relationship. It's in sitting outside. It's everything is the medicine. Like, quite truly, it's going to medicate you one way or the other. And so I know for myself, when I really discovered that, I had to let go. And I kind of talked about it. The first time it happened was from that post when I got really sick. And we were throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it, right? Like all of the supplements, all the protocols. I was working with doctors. We were doing cutting edge stuff. And I actually got sicker and sicker and sicker doing it. And I had to strip it all back. And it was uncomfortable and it was scary. And I had to start with working with a physical therapist, like doing eye movements. Like, this is where we started. I had 4 months of physical therapy, and that's where I had to start, was moving my eyes and sleeping a lot and allowing myself to rest, which was really hard for me because I wanted to be on the go all the time. I was not good at sitting still prior to that event. That changed afterwards. But the moments really are where
Yeah.
all the magic is. And when you can let go of the outcome being the magic and know that it's all the moments, it radically transforms the way you approach going through the process. And yeah, sometimes it still sucks. It's not fun. And it's still all part of the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can be in the moment thinking this sucks, poor me. And at the same time, there's a higher version of myself that goes, it's okay, Alex. I know it sucks. I know you feel like it's poor you. And both are true, right? Like, and I'm going, okay,
Yes.
my higher version, yeah, I get it. I know that you're right, but like, can you just zip it for a moment? Because right now I actually want to be a victim, okay? And then I go into my victim state, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for half a
Mm-hmm.
day, and I observe how I, enjoy the victim state, the drawn curtains, the not wanting to speak to everyone. And then I kind of go, okay, now it's boring. I think I'm done with being a victim.
Yep.
And it's so funny because my kids, they now, like, they so know me. I mean, of course, they've gone, they've seen, all these iterations. And like the other day, I asked my son about this. He's like, do you notice like when I still have my little moments where I dip into the victim and, he's like, yeah, I know, mom. You get so funny because then, we just can't talk to you. You're just like, everything is a but it only lasts a couple hours. You kind of withdraw to your room and then you come out and then you're back to being you again. And I loved how it's like, yeah, they notice, but they also know how to put it into its rightful place, and so we kind of talk about it and joke about it and go like, yeah, this is how it is. And that even after all these years of knowing, I still have those moments. And yes, they're getting few and far in between, but it's now being able to welcome them and to go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
the little one needs to play out, play up. And so instead of going like, oh my God, who are you? You're so unevolved, go away. We get to go, okay, right? Which is for years it was like this little thing that needed my energy, that wanted so much, was like, oh my God, disgusting, go away, you unevolved creature. And the learning really for me was to embrace her just as we would a little kid, right? Like when the little
Mm-hmm.
child cries about the crumbled cookie, but the cookie's broken, and we want to go, well, what's the matter? It's still a cookie, and I still gave you a whole one. And they want to cry because it's a crumbled cookie. And then we go, oh my gosh, I feel your pain. Yes, it's a crumbled cookie. And it's a terrible thing to receive a crumbled cookie, especially when you want a whole one. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like nowadays life is so colorful, right? I often think I don't need to watch movies because my life is a movie inside. There's all these fractions and different versions of Alex that I get to be with and that I need to kind of dance with. That who has time for a movie?
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I'm just listening to you and just laughing, like watching my own story. I had this happen this morning. I was, I've been doing some like different work in my business and having to learn some new things, and it's challenging. Like it's really fun, but it's challenging. It's like learning a new language for me, and so for my business. And so this morning, I just wanted to throw a hissy fit about it. I was getting frustrated and things weren't working. And I wanted to throw a temper tantrum. Like I really did. I was like balling up my fists. Like I feel like throwing a temper tantrum. And at the same time, I'm like laughing at myself watching this whole thing play out. And I have so much activation in my system that I'm like pacing around the house. And it lasted a couple of hours of this frustration. And I'm like, okay, I see you, I hear you, I know you're frustrated. And I had something on the TV in the living room when I walked in, and the line that was said was, "You remember this is supposed to be fun, right?" And I just cracked up laughing because I don't know what was playing, but that was very clearly for me. I don't know what conversation was happening there, but that was very clearly for me. And I started laughing and I went and sat down and finished what I was working on. And then I just laid down and just allowed myself to do some just, let's recalibrate for a minute. Like I have the tools here. We're good. We're okay. But I literally had that whole
Mhm.
experience this morning. And it's so funny to, like you said, have both things happening at the same time, like seeing the temper tantrum and also knowing that everything is going to be okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that this whole idea that, are we ever gonna evolve past it? Or another funny story, because it was for me in that moment like super hilarious when it happened. Um, I was on this mission a couple of years ago to, okay, like I'm really gonna like fully heal myself, like just like fully, right? And eventually doing all the things and realizing, walking on the beach in the morning with my husband, and it just hit me. I'm like, I I'm full of holes. Oh crap, I'm full of holes, and these holes I'll never I'll never be fully healed, right? That was the thought. And I was getting really like, oh my gosh, I'll never be fully healed. I'll And then it was like lightning hit me. And I was like, yeah, you just get to live holy, like a holy,
Mm.
because, well, actually the thought before was like, oh, I'm just like, I'm just like a damaged cow. That's the word that I used. I'm a damaged cow, and this comes from like childhood history and whatever, name calling that I received. So I called myself in that moment, I'm just a damaged cow, and I'm like talking to my husband, going like, yeah, I'm just a damaged cow. And then it hit me and it was like, no, you are a holy cow. You're a holy cow. You're full of holes. But you're holy. And it's the holes that make you holy. And it was just such a funny moment because it was like I could just hear like spirit show this to me. And I was like this, the Swiss cheese came to mind, and I was like in the ocean laughing and going, yeah, exactly. I'll just live as a holy cow. That's it. And that was it. It was like, I don't need any further healing. I am done. I am the holy cow.
I
And that's out.
love it. That's hilarious. And I
And I was thinking,
also
oh, that could
love
make a
what you
good book.
came to. Oh my God, that would make like the best book title. Holy cow. That would make such a great book.
How to become a holy cow.
How to become a holy cow and stop constantly trying to heal yourself from something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What liberation. Really, what liberation to go, you
Yes.
know what? I am whole with holes. And,
Yeah.
of course, we know the famous quote, the cracks is where the light gets in. And it really
Yeah.
is. It's like, yes, we don't need all of this perfection, which, of course, so much of the self-development world and
Hmm.
the spiritual development world is constantly pointing towards, like the state of perfection. Like
Yeah.
everything is perfect. And we
Yes.
live as goddesses and, the kings and queens and I'm like, it's not, and this is really what Bali did for me was like, I don't want any of it. I don't want any of it. I love exactly the way life is. I love the holes. I love the light that gets in. I love when big shadows are cast and I fall into the shadows and I fall apart intensely for 24 hours. And then I put myself back together and it's like rapture all over again. And it's all good that way. We don't need to change a thing. And that
Yeah.
radical acceptance, I think that's the healing.
I completely agree. I completely agree. The radical acceptance of everything it is to be human and living this experience, like every piece of it, even the challenges and the falling aparts and all the holes are magnificent. Like it is really truly a
Yes.
magnificent privilege to get to be a human here and to have the full experience of what that actually is. It really is magnificent.
Absolutely. Well, Amy, it was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And, there's like, I do feel like a level of soul restoration to go, yes, there are other beings and especially other women with whom we can have these conversations. And so I thank you. And I know that, I mean, anyone listening to this, you can only walk away from this conversation and go, wow, you know, we can transmute all of this. And in closing, and I'll let you say your closing piece. I want to say, when you hear these kind of stories, and you may be sitting still in your quote brokenness and in all of your mess and in the years where you've tried to do all the things, really to see everything that you've experienced like an arrow that's pulled back, pulled back, pulled back. And now you get to use all of this energy that you feel has taken away from you. All of that is going to come back to you the minute that you decide, okay, I'm going to transmute it. And I know that there's a pathway. So that's my closing piece. And yeah, Amy, over to you.
That it was so beautiful, really, truly. And I really do love the analogy of pulling the arrow back and what you just added there with like all of the energy, because there is so much energy when that is all pulled back there, like all the force that you have that's holding all of that there. And when you let that go, what happens? And the most perfect word is choice. Like when you make the choice, when you make the decision that it gets to be different. And again, not about perfection, not about
Yeah.
trying to have all of your ducks in a row and not having the outward appearance being, overly polished, but it is the choice that it can be different and that willingness and grit to just take the step in, to lean in and ask for the support or step into the thing that you already know to do because it's already all within you. When you take that step, that does unleash the energy that was pulled back before. And it is all going to come back to you. Like, it is very true. It's there and available for you. It's just wrapped up right now waiting for you to access it.
Absolutely. And as we're speaking, I feel like one last point that I want to touch upon, because it's an important one. I feel oftentimes, and I know this was me as well, when I started my journey and when I realized, oh my gosh, this ain't going to take 3 months or 6 months. This is a longer journey. My biggest fear at the time was that, how am I going to financially get through this? Because I realized, like, there was a moment where I realized I need so much help and so much support. And I finally need to give myself that, because that's what my soul needs. My soul needs the
Mm-hmm.
experience that I get to have everything that I need and desire to be fully supported so that I can fully blossom and do the work that I came here to do. And the next thought was like, oh my gosh, how is that going to financially work? And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because I know that for me also, there was another point of surrender to go, you know what? It's just going to be. It's going to be because I need it in order to fully become the best version of myself, which is not just going to make me happy, but it's going to serve the greater good. It's going to serve who all the people that I came here to serve. Like, we all have, we're all connected. So my well-being matters to the world. And I really needed to trust that and to go, you know what? It's just going to happen. I don't know how, but it's going to happen. And so it was. And I know that oftentimes other women, because I would say 98% of my people are women,
Mm-hmm.
probably for you as well, we get held back by this idea of like, oh my gosh, can I spend all this money? Can I? And whatever it is, right? Sometimes you don't have to spend all this money, but sometimes it
Yeah.
is. In my case, it certainly was. So what is your idea around that?
Yeah, it's very much the same. And, you know, the majority of people that I work with are women as well. And there's this idea of us having to restrict, right? So even going back to like the food conversation, which I won't go into, but we have to restrict. We can't have all. We can't give ourselves that big of a gift, right? And so you are a gift to the
Yeah.
world. And if what it takes for you to be in the full essence of that is to financially support yourself in whatever way that is, again, it could be on the smaller side, it could be on the larger side. And obviously, we're not advocating for you to go into major financial stress and debt to take care of yourself, but there is an investment, right? And also, there is something about being held through the process when it starts going south and you're are having a terrible day and you've got that person or group or team, whatever it is that you're working with, that can just be part of that support system for you as you're going through the process. There's something so important about that, because it does allow you to actually move a little bit faster, whatever that means for you, and to blossom, because you're not doing it yourself. It's not, I'm definitely an
Yeah.
advocate of not being a hyper independent in this situation, that it's not about hyper independence. Part of self care is knowing when you need support. It's knowing when you need to ask for help and have somebody hold that space for you while you go through something that's really challenging, and to stop DIYing it and stop lone wolfing it and allow yourself to be cared for. And it takes what it takes, right? And it may mean that it takes a little bit longer. If there's going to be a larger investment, it takes a little bit longer to go through that process, but it takes what it takes, because at the end of the day, if you spent the next 2 years and the financial resources to get to the place where you are coming alive, what is that really worth to you? Like, what's the worth at the end of the
Yeah.
day? What's the worth for you, for your family, for the ripple effects that that's going to have into the world, because you took the time you gave yourself the time and space to get to that place.
Absolutely, such a key. And somehow I feel, because at least that was, the case for me. spending money on I mean, now I have zero issues, right? Like zero.
Yeah.
But when I started, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm really gonna, spend money on me. And it wasn't just with various coaches, but it was even just like, am I really gonna, like buy everything organic? And, it's
Yeah.
because it's all the things. And it was a
Right.
major journey. And I mean, I know it's a journey for many women, and it is about valuing who we came
Hmm.
here to be in this world. And I love that you brought in, the food aspect, and living restricted. And yes, I think full liberation means there is no restriction, is that we
Yes.
get to be fully expressed, and we get fully fulfilled in all areas of
Mm.
life. And in
Yes.
some ways, that's the starting point to the full blossoming, right? And the,
Yeah.
the image that I have there is, it's a little bit like if you want to have a thriving garden with big vegetables and beautiful flowers, you can't go, okay, like we'll put little bit of water, and we'll save on the water, and then, oh, not so much fertilizer because it's expensive, so we'll put some, but just a little bit. No, we don't do that, right? Like when we go all out, it's like the garden just blossoms. And so we are the same. Well, so Amy,
Yes.
when people are looking for you, besides obviously finding you on social media, do you have a website? Where can people find you and your work?
Yes. So amygvitality.com is my website. You can go there to learn more about me. I'm most active right now on Facebook and somewhat on Instagram. So if you go on Facebook, follow me by my personal page, Amy Gernaat. That's the best way to be in touch with me. But either of those places, you can come learn more about me. And I love to just connect with people and have new people in my world as we're building this new definition of what it is to be healthy and human.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure. And I know it won't be the last time. And yeah, so much gratitude for who you are, who you're becoming, your journey, everything. Just really, really beautiful. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Alex. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I am also just